Yeah,
Okay,
good
thanks.
luck. I'm not trying to push you out, but sometimes people do drop off. So.
Okay, bye.
Peter.
All right, well, let's talk about using gravity in games. I know, like I said last time, we talked about creating something similar to They Need to Be Fed 3. And Ed, if you need to, you can kind of review what we had last week, or we can just put the link in the show notes and people can go watch last week's show to save a little bit of time.
Yeah, let me get my brain in gear here. Since I was thinking in terms of listening to this, I'm thinking, why couldn't I have been born like later? Because I played a lot of board games when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but when I played board games, I was a cheapo board player, so I'd be like, okay, well, I can't afford all these models, so the bottle cap is going to be the building, and the thing is going to be the whatever. And
you're right.
Get halfway through the game, and you're like, what was the bottle cap again?
I never got past the Parker Brothers level myself. Clue, Candyland, a little bit of Monopoly. That was about it for me.
Well, what I like about this whole thing is that everybody can kind of participate at whatever level they're comfortable with, right? I mean, there's going to be some people who want a 3D printer and they want to know all about those pieces. But to me, that's a physical piece. That's like a piece of machinery, and machinery and I don't get along very well. But I would be willing to order something, or if I knew somebody who printed stuff, I would buy them all the plastic for it and have them do it, right? Because they'd be interested and want to do it, and then I would have an interest in it, and it just kind of, I don't know, I get all excited about that kind of stuff because I see so many possibilities.
It is pretty cool. I'm excited by what he said about the 3D printers getting cheaper too. I'm just been waiting for them to get within like the price range where I can afford to experiment with one.
Yeah, right. Imagine, it applies so many different fields, right? I mean, kitchen tools or parts, or if anybody's gone to any of these events like Rooster Teeth or any of the other cosplay sort of events or anything like that, they know that people buy. They don't have to necessarily buy the whole game. They'll buy just pieces, right? They'll buy their favorite character. Like, I mean, I've got a character here. Right, from
Castle Crashers.
Castle Crashers, and so it's, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I have to have one of those. And this wasn't 3D printed. This was I bought a token for $5, and then I put it in basically the little candy machine, right? And it turned around and it spit out this little ball, and there's my guy. And if I had seen this at Target, I probably wouldn't have bought it, because I don't pay $6 for little miniature figures, but at this event, I was like, hey, this is...
You're in the right frame of mind, right? You're like,
yeah, well, here's the thing, is that I knew it was special. I have not seen these anywhere, and this was it. This was my opportunity to get one. And if you had that same kind of thing going on with 3D printing, right, where this is it, limited supply. There's only going to be so many printed. Your friend either prints one, or you either order one, or whatever. It just makes it more special.
I feel like there's got to be the right intersection of, because I'm with you, Ed. I think it's got to be, particularly for a guy like me, who I think it's interesting and I think it's cool, but I know if I spend too much on it, I can't kid myself that I'm really going to get my money's worth out of this. But I think there's got to be this intersection, because at a certain point it's going to become such a stable industry and it's going to become so mass market. I think some of the hobbyist fun is lost, because I think part of what's cool about it right now, I mean, going back a few years when it was MakerBot was selling these things where it was like, you had to put these things together. There was there's a real, you felt like you were on the frontier of something. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to buy this thing and I'm going to download a model off the internet, I'm going to push go and it's going to print it out. It really felt like there was lots of opportunity for things to get screwed up, and that to me adds to the appeal of it a little bit. Like, it's like, oh, okay, this is the fun of it, is that it's not push a button and it's not plug and play.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do like the idea that there's a community dedicated to this thing, right? Just to the board pieces and the game pieces. That way, if something does melt down or you do have a problem, you can go to that community and say, hey, how does this work? And you can trade designs and you can trade ideas.
Yeah,
I'm all about the ideas.
Okay, John, I think I am ready to start now.
All right, good.
I had to, I don't know, my brain wasn't quite in gear. So last week, first of all, we're just going to cover a little bit more this week. We got about 20 minutes. I want to warn people who are watching this that the design of this game is getting it more progressively difficult in terms of complexity of the code, but I continue to refine it as we do these hangouts and add comments, so I believe that people will still be able to completely understand how it works. You just gotta have some patience. And so in line with that, I want to take people on a quick retour so they can get started again. I'm not going to go through everything, but I just want you to start in the right place. So everything we said last week still applies. The link that we will supply again with the show will get you the whole repository of the code for this game. There'll be more versions now because it's been 2 weeks and I've been messing around with it. Today I'll commit another version, which is the one we're looking at. And as always, it's the first 3 files that you really care about are config Lua, build settings, and main Lua. And the only one we care about is starting in main Lua. If you start there, you're going to see a file that's about 45 lines long. You can ignore all the stuff at the top. Probably the only important line is line 12. Because this is a game where you can push more than one button. Multi-touch is enabled, so when you're on your device, you can push 2 buttons at the same time and get a response. Otherwise, you'd only be able to push 1 button at a time. Ignore this business. It's just setting up the environment. As I said last week, I rely upon SSK. I don't use it a whole bunch, but I do use some of the features. I've just become too accustomed to using it, so I pretty much include it in all projects. A change from last week. At one time, SSK came out. It was like this super pack of like everything, super starter kit, and I have since then refined it to what I call the core, the stuff you pretty much need all the time. And then I have started to separate out the other bits. So when you go to my site, you'll see SSK, and then you'll see a bunch of things that start with RG, RGCC. RG case error detect, RG, etc. There's other ones. I have broken out derivatives of SSK, so libraries that were part of it that didn't need to be in every game, and one of those was the collision calculator. Now, I kind of think most games are going to have collisions, but there's a few that don't have physics, so I took it out. But this game uses physics, and this week I got to the point where I needed to start doing more complicated collision interactions, and I didn't want to do the calculations myself. So I said, heck with it, I'm not going to do it, I'm too lazy. RGCC, I require it. Just so people understand what's happening here is you require SSK. You don't necessarily need to do this bit, you could just say require that. It's going to create a global called SSK, which gives you access to all of the SSK contents. Whenever you include a derivative, you always require it one time, and after SSK has been required, and it will attach itself to the SSK library. In fact, it doesn't really matter. You don't necessarily need to do it afterwards, but I encourage you to. If it discovers that SSK is not present, all of these are pretty much, unless it says in the documentation on GitHub, unless it says it requires SSK, most of these are independent. So, for example, you can use this without SSK being present, but if SSK is there, it straps itself on, so it's part of the whole hierarchy. So, common. Common is the settings file for this game. It's basically a module that's got a whole bunch of flags and variables for changing the size of the blocks and the speeds and the force values, etc., etc. I do some stuff here right in the beginning, and this is again in main Lua. I set up physics, I require it, I start it, I set the gravity to 0 because I'm going to have my own forces instead of actually the one gravity that comes in the physics package. I always keep this line in my code, but usually comment it out, which is the hybrid mode. So if I had that running or enabled, then you'd be able to see all these bodies. Just give you some feedback so you can see what's kind of going on in the world. It's good for when you've got strange physics behaviors and you're wondering, is my body in the right place? Is it the right shape? Did I remember to